the forgotten female pharaohs of ancient Egypt. They ruled the most powerful empire on earth. They commanded armies, built monuments that still inspire awe today, and were worshipped as living goddesses. Yet, for thousands of years, their stories were deliberately erased, their names removed from monuments, and their achievements credited to men. Today, we uncover the forgotten world of Egypt's female pharaohs, the most powerful women in ancient history, whose stories were hidden for millennia. What you're about to discover will change everything you thought you knew about ancient Egypt and the women who shaped civilization itself. For over 3,000 years, ancient Egypt was ruled by pharaohs, living gods on earth, who commanded absolute power over one of history's greatest civilizations. But here's what most people don't know. Many of these divine rulers were women. Egyptian history was deliberately rewritten by later pharaohs, Greek historians, and Roman conquerors who couldn't accept that women had wielded such power. Female pharaohs were systematically erased from official records, their names replaced with male successors, and their monuments attributed to their husbands or sons. Only in the last century have archaeologists and historians begun piecing together the true story. Through careful analysis of hieroglyphs, temple inscriptions, and archaeological evidence, we're finally uncovering the incredible stories of Egypt's forgotten queens. These weren't ceremonial figureheads or regent mothers ruling for infant sons. These were powerful women who held absolute authority, led military campaigns, built architectural wonders, and shaped the course of human civilization. Their erasure from history represents one of the greatest cover-ups in human history. Our story begins over 5,000 years ago with a woman whose name was nearly lost forever, Neithotep, possibly the first female pharaoh in human history. Dating to around 3100 BCE, during Egypt's very first dynasty, Neithotep's existence was only recently confirmed through analysis of ancient seal impressions and tomb inscriptions. For millennia, she was completely unknown to historians. In the 1990s, archaeologists working at Abydos discovered her name alongside other early pharaohs, but with one crucial difference: her name was written with feminine endings and accompanied by royal titles typically reserved for male pharaohs. Neithotep ruled during Egypt's formative period, when the concept of pharaonic kingship was still being established. This suggests that female rule wasn't unusual in early Egypt. It became controversial only later as patriarchal attitudes solidified. Her royal seals have been found in tombs throughout Upper Egypt, indicating she controlled substantial territory. Unlike later female pharaohs, who often ruled as regents, Neithotep appears to have ruled in her own right from the beginning. If confirmed, Neithotep predates every other known female ruler in human history by centuries. She established a precedent that would inspire female pharaohs for the next 3,000 years. Moving forward to around 2950 BCE, we encounter Merneith, a woman who transformed from queen mother to divine pharaoh in her own right. Merneith initially served as regent for her young son, Pharaoh Den, but archaeological evidence suggests she eventually claimed full pharaonic powers and ruled as a pharaoh herself. Merneith's tomb at Abydos is identical in size and construction to those of male pharaohs of her era. Most significantly, she received the same elaborate burial rites reserved for divine pharaohs, including the ritual sacrifice of servants, a practice reserved only for gods on earth. Her tomb contains inscriptions that use both queenly and pharaonic titles, suggesting a transition from regent to full pharaoh. Some inscriptions show her name unclosed in a serek, the rectangular frame used exclusively for pharaohs' names. Under Merneith's rule, Egypt developed many administrative systems that would define pharaonic government for millennia. Records suggest she reorganized the kingdom's bureaucracy and established new trade relationships with neighboring lands. Contrary to stereotypes about ancient women, Merneith appears to have personally led military campaigns. Inscriptions from her reign reference successful wars against Nubian tribes and Syrian city-states. Perhaps the most famous female pharaoh, Hatshepsut, ruled Egypt for over 20 years during the 15th century BC and transformed the kingdom into an unprecedented economic powerhouse. Hatshepsut began her reign as regent for her stepson Thutmose III, but within a few years she had assumed full pharaonic powers. Most remarkably, she began depicting herself as a man in official artwork, complete with the traditional pharaonic false beard. Under Hatshepsut's rule, Egypt experienced one of its greatest periods of prosperity. She focused on trade rather than conquest, establishing trading expeditions to the mysterious land of Punt that brought back gold, ivory, incense, and exotic animals. Hatshepsut was one of history's greatest builders. Her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari remains one of Egypt's most beautiful monuments. She also erected more obelisks than any pharaoh except Ramesses II, including the tallest obelisk ever successfully erected in Egypt. Hatshepsut's reign challenged fundamental assumptions about gender and power. She adopted all the traditional male symbols of pharaonic authority while simultaneously emphasizing her role as divine mother of Egypt. Rather than seizing power through violence, Hatshepsut used religious authority to legitimize her rule. She claimed direct divine appointment by the god Amen and staged elaborate religious ceremonies to demonstrate her divine approval. After her death, Thutmose III and later pharaohs systematically defaced her monuments, chiseled her name from inscriptions, and attempted to erase her from official records. This erasure was so thorough that she was unknown to historians until the 19th century. One of ancient Egypt's most iconic figures, Nefertiti, may have done far more than just inspire beautiful art. She may have ruled Egypt as pharaoh under a different name. Nefertiti was the queen of Akhenaten, the pharaoh who revolutionized Egyptian religion by promoting worship of a single god, Aten. But evidence suggests she was far more than just a supportive wife. Recent archaeological evidence indicates that Nefertiti served as co-pharaoh alongside Akhenaten, wielding equal power in their revolutionary kingdom. Artwork from their capital shows her performing pharaonic duties typically reserved for male rulers alone. Around year 12 of Akhenaten's reign, Nefertiti disappears from the historical record, but a mysterious pharaoh named Neferneferuin appears. Many scholars now believe these are the same person, that Nefertiti assumed full pharaonic powers and ruled under a new name. Nefertiti wasn't just a passive participant in their religious revolution. She may have been its driving force. Temple inscriptions suggest she held the highest religious authority and personally conducted the most sacred rituals. The famous bust of Nefertiti shows a woman of extraordinary beauty and regal bearing. But more importantly, the artwork from their period consistently depicts her as equal in size and importance to Akhenaten, unprecedented for a queen. Our journey concludes with Taosret, the last woman to rule Egypt as pharaoh until Cleopatra, over 1,000 years later. Taosret initially served as regent for the young pharaoh Siptah, but when he died unexpectedly, she claimed full pharaonic powers and ruled Egypt for approximately 7 years around 1190 BCE. Taosret inherited an Egypt facing multiple crises: invasions by mysterious sea peoples, economic difficulties, and internal political instability. Rather than collapsing under these pressures, she proved to be a capable military and political leader. Unlike many pharaohs who relied on generals, Taosret personally led Egypt's armies against invading forces. Inscriptions from her reign document successful military campaigns that preserved Egypt's borders during a chaotic period. Despite Egypt's difficulties, Taosret managed to complete several major construction projects, including additions to the Great Temple complex at Karnak and her own elaborate tomb in the Valley of the Kings. Taosret's tomb is one of the largest and most elaborate in the Valley of the Kings, comparable to those of the greatest male pharaohs. This demonstrates the respect and resources she commanded during her lifetime. Taosret's reign ended when Setnak seized power. Like other female pharaohs, her name was systematically erased from monuments and king lists, and her achievements were credited to male successors. Understanding why these remarkable women were forgotten requires examining the deliberate campaign to erase them from history. Later pharaohs viewed female rulers as threats to male-dominated power structures. By erasing evidence of successful female pharaohs, they reinforced the idea that men were naturally suited to rule while women were not. Egyptian theology was gradually modified to emphasize male pharaohs as earthly representatives of male gods. Female pharaohs became theologically inconvenient, so their religious authority was retroactively questioned or denied. The erasure wasn't just bureaucratic, it was physical. Names were chiseled off monuments, statues were destroyed or modified, and tombs were vandalized. This systematic destruction took enormous effort and resources, proving how threatening these women's legacies were to male power. Greek historians, who provided much of our early information about Egypt, often ignored or minimized female rulers. Their male-centered worldview prevented them from accurately recording women's achievements. The rediscovery of Egypt's female pharaohs represents one of archaeology's greatest detective stories and has profound implications for how we understand ancient history. Modern archaeology has revolutionized our understanding through new technologies: ground-penetrating radar revealing hidden chambers, DNA analysis identifying royal mummies, and computer imaging reconstructing defaced inscriptions. Scholars have learned to identify the telltale signs of deliberate erasure: chisel marks over feminine endings, suspicious gaps in king lists, and monuments where female pharaohs' names were replaced with male successors. Each rediscovered female pharaoh forces historians to reconsider fundamental assumptions about ancient politics, religion, and society. These discoveries prove that women wielded absolute power in the ancient world far more often than previously believed. New female pharaohs are still being discovered. As recently as 2019, archaeologists identified previously unknown female rulers through careful analysis of existing evidence, suggesting more discoveries await. To truly understand Egypt's female pharaohs, we must examine the unique religious context that made their rule possible. Unlike many ancient cultures, Egyptian religion featured powerful female deities who ruled over crucial aspects of life. Isis representing magic and motherhood, Hathor representing love and fertility, and Mot representing truth and justice. This divine feminine provided theological justification for female pharaohs. Female pharaohs often emphasized their role as maintainers of Mot, cosmic order, and justice. This allowed them to frame their rule as divinely necessary rather than politically ambitious. Egyptian pharaohs were considered married to the goddesses of Egypt. Female pharaohs navigated this by emphasizing their roles as divine mothers and protectors of the realm. The forgotten world of Egypt's female pharaohs teaches us profound lessons about power, gender, and the deliberate construction of historical narratives. For over 3,000 years, women regularly ruled one of history's most powerful civilizations as absolute monarchs, military leaders, and living goddesses. They built monuments that still inspire awe, led armies to victory, and governed millions of subjects with divine authority. These remarkable women were systematically erased from history, not because they failed as rulers, but because they succeeded too well. Their achievements threatened male-dominated power structures that preferred to pretend women had never wielded such authority. Every time we discover another forgotten female pharaoh, we're reminded that women's exclusion from power hasn't been natural or inevitable. It's been artificial and deliberately constructed. These ancient queens prove that women have always been capable of absolute leadership. During their reigns, Egypt experienced some of its greatest periods of prosperity, artistic achievement, and territorial expansion. Their success demonstrates that diverse leadership strengthens rather than weakens civilizations. Egypt's female pharaohs didn't just rule. They ruled extraordinarily well. Their stories were hidden, but their achievements were real. These forgotten queens remind us that women have always been capable of absolute power. We just haven't always been allowed to remember them. Today, we choose to remember, honor, and learn from the remarkable women who ruled as gods in ancient Egypt.